Good late afternoon. Welcome to the Oxnard City Council Housing and Economic Development Committee. The date is December 10th, 2019, and we'll have the city clerk take the roll, please.
Member Flynn?
Here.
Member Lopez?
Here.
And Chair Madrigal is absent at the moment. The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Tuesday, December 3rd.
Thank you very much. Why don't we all rise for the pledge, please? Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda. And Madam City Clerk, it doesn't appear there are any speakers for that. And then there is the C, consent agenda, item 1, which is the approval of the minutes. What's the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move to approve.
And I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So the minutes pass. Item D, reports. Housing Department. Subject, update on Las Cortes housing development. Recommendation is that the Housing and Economic Development Committee receive an update on the Las Cortes housing development located at 1st Street and Rose Avenue. And we'll have the housing director give us a report, please.
Thank you, members of the committee. Emilio Ramirez, housing director with the city of Oxnard. Yes, this is a receive and file on an active development project for the redevelopment of a public housing site. It's a little confusing, I'll tell you that right now, but we are talking about Las Cortes Phase 3 update, which is the second phase of the Las Cortes development. I know what I just said. I'm sorry. Okay? So originally, the public housing site was built in 1952, and it included 260 units on 28 acres on what would be the corner of Rose and First. And it's still, but when it was a public housing site, it was known as the Colonial Village. That was designated as public housing site CAO 31001, public housing speak. But we needed to revitalize that because, as you can see, it's fairly old and dilapidated, and for that matter, inefficient use of 28 acres of land. So we're working to redevelop the site. That redevelopment included 4 phases of what would have been that 28 acres, where the first phase is a project that's already completed called Terraza de las Cortes. It had 64 units. And then it had included a 2-phase development known as Las Cortes, the second phase, or the first phase of which was phase 2 of the project, and that is completed and is 144 units. Phase 3 of the project, or phase 2 of Las Cortes, is what is currently in the entitlement process for the eventual demolition and redevelopment of the site. It will leave a small piece at the very corner of First and Rose, and that will have been the last phase of the project, phase 4, probably to be built by a different developer or maybe by the Housing Authority directly. But the project included clearance of that 28 acres, or demolishing 260 units, which we received permission from HUD to do so. And we demolished the first half of it and built the phase 1, or Terraza de las Cortes, and accomplished phase 1 of the Las Cortes project, 144 units there. And so we're pending the last 2 projects that you see of 129 units of Las Cortes and the 44 remaining. First thing that we had to do was relocate all of the public housing tenants in the 260 units. We did that faithfully for the first part of it, or 144 of that site, and we just finished relocating the last 10 units about a month ago. It took us some time to finish the last piece, but we did that about a month ago, and we're ready now to proceed with phase 3 of the project, phase 2 of Las Cortes. And so the final unit that was relocated moved out on the 5th of November. So phase 3 of the project, phase 2 of Las Cortes, includes 127 units of affordable housing. They move out of being what is known as public housing, a term of art when it's owned by a public agency, to affordable housing, a term that is the same except for it's owned privately, so a private activity in that regard. And they would be building 129 units as approved by HUD for our disposition and demolition request. It includes amenities like a tot lot, outdoor gathering areas, et cetera, and the affordable housing units. In this case, built by a group called Urban Housing Communities out of Orange County, who was procured quite some time ago to build what would be the Las Cortes project. In other words, phase 2 and phase 3 of the 4-phase project. This is what is the 4-phase project. This is what is the second phase of Las Cortes, or the 4-phase project is the entire site that includes all of this and all of this. So that's not part of it, and this is already built, and this is already built, and this is Terraza de las Cortes. So on that 28-acre site, which is the wider area of the aerial map, is the full site that we have been working on redeveloping. The subject site in this case includes, that is in the dotted line area in color. Here's a sample elevation of the buildings to be built in Las Cortes 2. It's similar to what is already built and occupied at Las Cortes 1. As you can see, these are just elevations of what they would be. The massing, the scale of the potential development of 127 units. The next step is that we are in entitlement process of Las Cortes 2, and those 129 units, we're in the middle of planning, in the planning process to accomplish the design review and et cetera. Next phase for that would be to seek the financing needed to build it. Right now we're talking about a $70 million project. We are going to need to contribute a substantial amount, not nearly 70 million, but in the range of 5 or 6. And we need to identify how to get to that point. And to raise the $70 million that is needed is going to take us some time, and then construction or plan check, and get to construction and build out. Originally, the permission from HUD was that we would dispose of the site and at disposition. In other words, when we have a building permit to move forward, that's when we would demolish the units. Well, between now and then, that may very well be 2 or 3 years, depending on how long it takes us to raise $70 million. And we don't feel like we should wait until that time to demolish the now vacant, boarded up, attractive nuisance that exists at Colina Village. So we've sought HUD approval. We've already submitted it, asking for permission to demolish now. We would do that via some sort of a preliminary loan to UHC, and then recapture that loan at the point of closing the transaction for the future redevelopment. We have not yet received approval from HUD to demolish. We think we will get that sometime around March or April of this year, and then we'll be able to demolish go forward. It is the obligation of Urban Housing to demolish per the agreement that we have with them, and so they will be doing it while we still own it. We're working with private counsel, special counsel Mark Mannion, to negotiate all of this with HUD and allow us to move forward. We think that we can start construction and potentially as early as January 2021, depending on whether we're successful to raise the financing to develop using tax credits. That's the scheme that we have right now for development. So if we're successful, then we will initiate construction in January. If we're not, then we're going to try again for tax credits in the second round of 2021, which put us into construction in 2022. But we think that one of those two things might happen. Either way, we don't want to wait that long until we demolish the existing attractive nuisance. That's the update. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, including kind of the status and go forward and the current condition.
Thank you very much. And I'll just defer to Committee Member Lopez.
Thank you. This is really helpful. When I did my ride along with the police department a few months ago now, this was definitely one of those areas that they were very concerned about. You know, with the I mean, it's empty. The home, these spaces were boarded up. So there was definitely concern about how long is this going to continue sitting and the number of calls. And it's not just the police responding to it, but the fire department as well. So I think this is a great plan moving forward. And I mean, the amount of money that needs to be raised. Did you mention how much has been of that?
No, we haven't. I mean, we haven't tried yet. We haven't applied for funding and et cetera, but we know that we need 70+ million. And so we have at least a plan as to how to raise it, but we haven't actually submitted any applications.
Okay. I think that's it on my end.
Thank you very much. I was actually most interested in that because it's a lot of money, obviously, $70 million. And I think about the Rice Avenue interchange, I think about the great program and things like that, and they're all in those, astronomical financial amounts. So what if you could talk just a little bit more about the plan and the time frame about to raise the money?
First of all, the development includes a lot of not just housing. We have to realign San Gregorio, we have to do public roads, and for that matter, the road along First Street needs work and infrastructure work and et cetera. So it does include a lot of things that are more community benefit. And we're also going to do some improvement to the park, which is adjacent to the area. However, all of that is eligible because it's complete process for developing the affordable housing. So in this regard, the development or the redevelopment is going to come out of being a public housing trust with HUD and make it be a private activity affordable housing development, similar to a lot of other things that happen. The primary source of financing is low-income housing tax credits. Low-income housing tax credits is a competitive allocation that we submit to the state, and we are right now thinking that we are going to finish full entitlements in May of 2020 and be ready to submit for those tax credits in July of 2020. If that happens, then that is essentially an equity investment, which urban housing will sell on the open market and raise $65 million of it to make it happen. We will then put project-based vouchers, home money, a little bit of local affordable housing money to raise the difference, including a write-down of the dirt. We think that that's the funding mechanism that will accomplish the 70 million. If we do not succeed, the tax credits are highly, highly competitive. And so if we do not succeed in winning that competition, then we're going to try again a year later and see if we can compete well. If not, then we'll get back to the drawing board and figure out a different method.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to, one last question, just discuss the actual site that has yet to be raised. And how are we, I've been there several times, but have we surrounded it with a fence? What have we done to try to avoid any kind of illicit behavior occurring there?
Thank you, and thank you, Councilwoman Lopez. It is a real concern to us as well. It's a problem, and it's an open, exposed liability, so we need to move swiftly. First of all, it's been in that condition because we hadn't finished relocating the tenants, and we were not able to even seek permission to demolish while we still had tenants, and so we needed to focus on relocating the tenants. We finished that in November. Meanwhile, we do have 24-hour security on site. Dial, it's the name of the company that we use. We have boarded up everything. Nonetheless, we get intrusion. And we spend a lot of money maintaining the boarded up condition and the security and all of those things. We do get a lot of behavior that is not positive. Everything from squatters that move in, trespassers, to simply just kids partying, smoking and drinking and et cetera. So there's a lot of behavior that we need to mitigate from the attractive nuisance being removed. And so we'll try to have it cleared as soon as we possibly can. But as you can imagine, the process and bureaucracy of HUD approval is significant.
Thank you. That concludes my questions. And Committee Member Lopez, do you have any other further comments or questions?
Yeah, just to follow up, just to make sure that I understood correctly, that the demolition, that cost or that expense has already been allocated in this process, or is that part of that 70 million?
No, it is part of the 70 million, but it has not been allocated. We do have a source of Housing Authority controlled non-HUD money that we are projecting to use for that demolition. So while it is a obligation of urban housing communities and they were supposed to have rolled it into the development cost, we are going to rethink it because we want to demolish now. And so we're going to give them a loan that they will repay when we close the $70 million project.
And that, that area, that land would still remain under the Housing Authority until it's...
Yes, in fact, we're going to maintain ownership of it post that, we will enter into some form of a ground lease, and for that matter, the Housing Authority will generate income over the life of the project. And that's how the current cost of demolishing, we're doing it via developer fees that we get because we're engaged in Terraza de las Cortes and Cortes 1 and et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much for that update and that report, and we're anxious to see that project go forward. And the last item on the agenda is item F, items for future agenda items. Committee Member Lopez, do you have anything to recommend, or?
I do. I wanted to mention this morning I attended a press conference that was set up by Cause. They published their housing survey that they were working on the last couple of months, and I know that they're expected to come to council next Tuesday and give a presentation on that. But I just thought I would kind of mention that as housing committee members. But one request that I did have from staff is following up on the lecture, the presentation that took place in November on the mobility and autonomous vehicles. If it's possible for a summary of that presentation to be brought forward either to the committee or to council. And as part of that conversation, one of the takeaways that I had from that presentation was possibly considering updating our parking requirements in the city. So I think it would be great if we can have that discussion on how we can, start moving that forward.
Thank you very much. Excellent suggestion. And with no further items, this meeting is adjourned.